Okay, welcome everybody to another Acoustic Guitar Talks live stream. Great to have you here with us today. If you are here, say hi in the chat. I see Joe there. Hey, how are you, Joe and Razking? Good to see you guys. Let us know where you are from. And while you do that, we are streaming on YouTube and Facebook today, so you can check out the stream at either of those platforms or indeed on the website on the live stream webpage. So today we are going to be talking about a really cool topic. One of the top 3 things I'm so glad that I learned to do early on in my guitar playing. It was really out of necessity more than anything, and that is how to work songs out using your ear. Okay, so not having any music or anything like that, simply having a recording of the song and then going about trying to work it out by ear. And I did that in a very sort of trial and error kind of approach. But today we're going to look at strategies and methods that are really effective in being able to do that, because it really is a skill that anybody can learn. It looks like magic at first when you see someone do this. I can remember that exact same feeling when I had a friend who could do it and I couldn't, and I'm thinking, how the hell do you work songs out by ear? But it is a skill that anybody can do. And today I have a very special guest with me to do this stream. And he was actually a very popular guest back on the stream back in November of last year, November 2022. And I can think of no one better to talk about anything to do with ear and oral training and ear training for guitar and music in general than my good friend, Dylan Andrews. So I'm going to bring him in. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, Simon. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. How about yourself?
I'm doing great, man. Great.
Excellent. Hang on, what are we? Yeah, Sunday night for you.
Yeah, Sunday night, 9 p.m.
Oh, I've got you out of work hours, haven't I?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, kind of. I work late. That's no worries. What time is it where you are?
Monday for me at 11 in the morning. So we are like,
wow.
Yeah, miles, hours and hours apart.
Yeah.
Well, it's great. Thank you so much for agreeing to come back on. We had a great live stream last year in November where we were talking about tips for developing a great ear, of which one of the benefits to having a great ear is then to be able to sit and listen to a song and be able to nut it out on the guitar. So we want to get sort of more specific about that today. And you might have heard me saying there in the introduction, for me, it was really out of necessity. I mean, I'm 48, and when I started playing guitar, it was 1990, and there was no internet.
Yeah.
uh, Back in
Uh,
the dark old ages. And, it was either buy a tab book, go in and buy a tab book, and, it'd be reasonably accurate, but quite accurate, really. But, you had to spend money on those things. And, that was a lot of money back then when
yeah.
you're 15 and all that. So I would try and work songs out by ear. And it was a very trial and error approach. And it took quite, it's hard to remember exactly, but it probably took quite a bit of time, and it's still a skill that I
Yeah.
hone today. But how about yourself? You come from probably a slightly different era in terms of when you started playing guitar, I'm assuming. But what's
Yeah, a
your
little.
experience with working
I mean,
some?
there still wasn't a ton, you know. Like I was born in '93,
Okay.
so it whatever was there as I was learning guitar wasn't that great. There wasn't, YouTube videos going in depth. There wasn't tabs everywhere. You had to pay for it. I remember just trying to find them in the back of magazines and stuff, and training your ear, I didn't even know was a possibility. Like I thought either you had it or you didn't have it, and you just couldn't develop it. I mean, we would, when I was young, we would try to learn songs for hours and hours, and we would, by the end of it, what we would have is we wouldn't even know if we were right or not. So transcribing was really, really difficult. Even when I was a kid, my dad told me if I could transcribe this sax solo, he'd give me like $20, and
Hmm.
I still couldn't do it. Like even with that on the line, as a 12-year-old kid, that was like everything, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
But yeah, there wasn't really anybody really talking about ear training that I could find. That no one was really coaching it or teaching it.
Mhm.
Everyone that had a good ear really kind of was just born with it. They didn't really work at it. At least all the friends that I knew. So yeah, it was a struggle.
Yeah,
For many many years not having a good ear. Like I didn't know how to train it.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. Well, perhaps what we will do here is we'll break it down and look at it from a few different angles. And I'd be interested because everyone's probably going to be slightly different in how they go about working songs out by ear. So it'd be good because I've never really talked to you about this before. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
we'll probably have a bit of a different take in some areas, which is always great to see. Um, but in terms of, I mean, why do we, in your opinion, why do we want to work songs out by ear? I mean, if we've got tablatures, why not
Yeah.
just use tablatures? I mean, it's a lot quicker, at least in the early stages. And I think a lot of people sort of, turn away from working songs out by ear because it is challenging in the beginning. And nowadays you've got tabs everywhere and, inaccurate, accurate, whatever, but it's just too easy to get a tablature for something, right? So why
Yeah.
why bother going to the effort, in your opinion, of working songs out by ear?
Well, one reason is I think a lot of the times if you don't know how to work it out by ear, when you're looking at tablature or someone else teaching it, you're not going to be 100% sure that the tablature is right. I've looked at tons of tabs to spend hours of practicing them and to find out that they were wrong. So that was one of my first reasons to really want to start developing my ear and working on it. Another thing too was speed. So reading the tablature and watching videos and going through all of that, it didn't take forever, but it was taking a lot longer to work out songs. And I knew that if I could just listen to it and instantly or close to instantly know what was going on, it would save me a lot of time. So that means I could learn songs faster, I could progress on the guitar faster. And it would also, I think the main reason too is it removes frustration from the learning process. That a lot of people get frustrated because songs take so long to learn, and they're going through it. But if you just listen to it and you know exactly what's going on, it just makes playing the guitar a lot more fun. So those are some of the main reasons. And I think too, when people see other people doing it, where they can just listen to a song and play it, and how other people say play by ear, it's something that you really envy because it's a really cool thing. And it's also really cool to know that when you're just listening to a song in the car or wherever, you know exactly what's going on. So I think those are some of the main reasons why a lot of people want to learn songs by ear. At least for me, why I really wanted to.
Yeah, good points, and that's a good one. In particularly these days, I mean, there's so many tabs out there, but there's so many inaccurate tabs.
Yeah,
There's
there.
always typically, if it's free, it's probably wrong
Yes,
to
yeah.
some point, and even the ones you buy can be kind of dicey too. Um,
Right, because there's a lot of things where, I mean, I've seen a lot of tabs to where they transcribed all the right notes, but they
mhm.
were in all the wrong places on the fretboard.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that just means that when you're reading a tab, someone, a professional musician who's got 30 years of experience could have done it, or a 15-year-old who thinks he has a good ear could have done it. You
Yeah,
just never know. So yeah,
that's right.
there's no reliability.
I also think uh, talking about benefits of doing this and why you'd want to do it, um, it develops your ear, so you listen to music on a much deeper level. So even I find a lot of the time when with students and that, and they're working with tablatures, it might be down there, even if it's accurate in the tablature, they can't hear it in the song. It might be a part
Right.
that's underneath, and they just can't perceive that part or hear that part in the song. So, they might have the music for it, but they don't know sort of how it's meant to sound. And it when you're working songs out by ear, you've really got to listen to the song and isolate the part in your ear that you're trying to work out. So you're able to develop this skill of, I call it like active listening, where you can really hone in on a particular instrument and hear the line that it's playing or the chords, despite everything else that's going on. It enables you to really, it's almost like you're at a desk and you've got the faders and you're able to push up the fader of the instrument you're trying to hear. It'd be
Exactly.
great if you could do that, but in reality, you're hearing everything mixed together. But you can develop your ear to be able to isolate things like that. And that's going to help when you're jamming with people and you're listening to what's happening around you. You'll play much better just across the board, improvising, etc., if your
Yeah.
ear is good. So apart from the obvious of, yes, I can work songs out by ear, which is great, enough of a reason, in my opinion, in itself to do it, but it's going to have a flow-on effect to other areas of your playing.
Yeah, it definitely will. If you're just training your ear to be able to learn songs, then that's awesome, but you're also going to improve in a lot of areas without you even realizing it. You connect
Yeah.
with more. The whole isolated thing too is, yeah, like being able to, sometimes you'll be trying to learn a song, but it'll have three guitar parts going on at the same time. They've been overdubbed. So,
Hmm.
trying to isolate those and just listen to specific ones is super important. But yeah, when you're training your ear in that way, it makes improvising, it makes everything better.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we move on, I did forget to say, but oh, sorry, that's my camera. Okay. Before we do move on, if you've got any questions today, just ask in the chat. I am monitoring the chat here. So if anyone's got any questions as we get into this, feel free to ask and we'll certainly address those questions. But let's begin here, Dylan. And let's talk a little bit about relative pitch because that's really where it's at, right? Relative
Yes.
pitch. And relative pitch, there's two things basically. You got perfect pitch, you got relative pitch.
Yeah.
There's a difference, right? Perfect pitch can be learned. Anyone can learn and develop perfect pitch. Some will say you can learn relative pitch. You can develop perfect
Yeah.
pitch.
I
Let me
was like,
flip
oh
that
no, we're
around.
about to have a disagreement right away. Yeah. Keep going.
So, perfect pitch. Let me define perfect pitch. Perfect pitch is like if I play a note on the guitar, if Dylan had perfect pitch, he could tell me exactly what that note is.
Yeah.
Now, most musicians don't have perfect pitch, so it's something only a few people have, and
Yeah.
some will say you can learn it. I don't think you really can. You either got it or you don't, but it's not even close to being necessary, clearly, because most people don't have it anyway, to,
Right.
to be able to play and work music out. But relative pitch is simply relating one pitch to another, right? So if I've got a note and I hear it in a song, I can now play notes on my guitar until I find that note on the guitar. I'm not
Right.
going to find it unless I've got something to relate it to, right? So I've got to hear the pitch and then I've got to find it on the guitar. And it will be a little trial and error approach perhaps in the beginning, but the more information and knowledge you've got, the quicker you can find that note. But how would you sort of define the relative pitch thing?
Yeah,
Dan?
I would say you nailed it. Is when you're listening out for relative pitch, you're just listening out for how the chords within the key are working together. Like what are the distances? Is this a 4 chord? Is it a 5 chord? How it all relates in relationship to the one chord or the one note of the key. And like you were saying, Simon, if it's a C chord or a G chord, I'm not going to hear that.
Mm.
I can make a educated guess, but I'm going to hear, oh, that's the 4th chord of the key, the 5th chord of the key. And with perfect pitch, another thing about that is if you hear a chord and you know it's a C chord, well, that's not nearly as valuable as knowing, let's say, it's a 4 chord, because
Yeah,
the numbers will always tell you so much more information. The 4 tells me exactly where it is in the scale, how it feels, what are its tendencies, and where to go. If I just know it's a C, well, then so what? You know, I can play that, I guess, but no, relative pitch I find is way more valuable.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So let's say that, let's say we're trying to work out a chord progression. So typically, if I'm trying to work out a chord progression, I mean, you get a lot quicker at these things, right? So you develop
Oh
a
yeah,
skill where you can kind of do it a lot quicker in bigger chunks of music at a time. But if we're trying to work out a chord progression, I tend to listen for the root movement in the chords, right? So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
um, now let's say we've got a chord progression that goes something like this, right? We've got a C, a G, an A minor, an F. Then I'm going to try and I'm going to try and find the root note of the first chord.
Right,
So humming the note. So your voice is really plays a big role here. So when you're trying to work out a note, you want to be able to hum the note that you're trying to find. So if I'm hearing a C chord, I don't know it's C actually, right? It's just a chord at this point.
right,
But
right. So
I'm trying
now,
to define where the root note is, and then I'm trying to find that note on the guitar, anywhere on the guitar. I just want to know what the root note of the chord is, or the bass note of the chord is. And once I
yeah,
find that, then I can define whether it's major or minor or other, whatever it might be.
right.
Um, and then I would go to the next chord and I would look for, uh, find where that note is. And if I, have the note in my ear, and I'm here, okay, instead of just thinking, oh, that's wrong, and just randomly going to some other place on the fretboard, I want to make a choice as to whether I'm too high or too low. We're relating the pitch that we're playing at the time to what we're trying to find. So
Right.
if I'm trying
Yeah.
to find and I'm here, I know it's too high, so I've got to go down as opposed to up. Okay,
Yes.
so I'm not just randomly just trying to find the note and going in all different directions. You've kind of got to assess what it is, whether it's right or whether it's too high or too low, and then
Right.
go about finding it. But it only stays in your ear for so long, right? It's going to kind of go
Yeah.
too quickly.
It
So the
diminishes
speed thing,
very quickly. Yeah,
yeah,
it goes away. As soon as you start hearing other chords, like if you're trying to figure out what the first chord was and then you hear the second chord,
yep,
it immediately is going to diminish a bit.
yeah,
Right? So that's why when you're very new to figuring out songs, one of the best things to do is just to listen to one chord or one note and hit stop
yeah,
and then just sing that or try to find that on the guitar. And that's a good first step, right? So this is still kind of working out the notes by trial and error, but if you're very new to it, just working out the bass notes, exactly like you said, I do the exact same thing. When I'm listening to music, I'm just listening to the root movements. But that's a great first start. It's just to take a little bit, because as soon as another chord or other notes are introduced, that your ear starts to pick up on other things, so you lose it really fast.
yeah, absolutely. I'm there, stopping it immediately after whatever it is I'm trying to work out, chord, note, whatever it is. Sometimes, particularly when it's a bit of a quicker succession of chords or notes, particularly,
Right.
just got to start. As soon as it even goes to the next note, you can lose it. So you just got to stop it and then hum the
Especially,
note, try and keep it in your ear. You might have it for a few seconds. And as
yeah,
soon as you play a note and it's not correct, it will dilute that sound a little bit too. So back you
correct.
go. And you might be back and forth a number of times before you actually even just get the root note, particularly early on. So
Exactly.
expect that, right? That's going
Yeah.
to occur. but then you want to find, and then you might want to try and play the note at the same time as it happens on the recording and see if it fits, if you're not too sure.
Right, right.
And then you would move on to the next root note and then see if you can find that, and then maybe play the first two and kind of, you move through in that sort of fashion, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that can really help is when I'm listening to a piece of music, the first thing I try to find out is which chord is going to be the one.
Yeah.
So that way I can figure out what key it's in.
Hmm.
So if you're figuring out songs by ear and you can't just listen to a chord progression and know what's going on yet, I would listen to what chord feels like home, what chord feels like the song can be finished on that. It feels has a lot of resolution to it.
Hmm.
And then you can pick up your guitar, just listen to that, and then find what it is. So let's say you found that it was a C, and then it's a C major. So if you know that it's the key of C major, and when you're trying to figure out other chords, instead of looking at the entire fretboard, well, if you know the scale, now there's only 7 options, right? And the 7th chord is diminished, so depending on the type of music you listen to, you probably only have 6 options. So it makes it a lot easier to transcribe songs when you can figure out what the key is, or at least if you can figure out if it's major or minor.
Yeah, and I guess that's basically because, I mean, you could work songs out by ear with no fretboard knowledge, no theory knowledge. It would be a little
You can.
more, but
It's
the
a
theory
lot
and
harder.
the
Yeah.
fretboard stuff is really going to help. I mean, that's half of it almost. Is it gives you all this information and points you in the right direction. So instead of trying to find your way to a destination without a map saying, you just go walk off in one direction and hope that you hit it and not there, and you keep just,
Exactly.
maybe eventually you'll end up at this destination maybe 10
Yeah.
hours later. Whereas
Yeah.
if you've got a map that's sort of saying, well, this way, that way, you can get there in 5 minutes, right? So there's
Exactly.
there's knowledge that you're equipped with to go with your ear that allows you to get the note much quicker. It's not just simply hearing the pitch and finding the pitch. I mean, you get very quick at that, but as you say, if you're going to be in a key, so if you can establish the key, 7 chords, but yet diminished is probably not going to be in there. And
Right.
pretty much with a lot of mainstream sort of music, it's going to be a major or a minor chord. You're not going to get too many extensions.
Right.
There'll be some of that, but
Some add nines,
yeah.
See, you'll hear C add 9, but that's
C add
like,
9, yeah, you'll get, and you'll learn these sounds. You'll learn the sound of C add 9, right?
right, right,
Sometimes you can hear and go, I don't have perfect pitch, but I can hear that's a C add 9. It's just
right, right. Just
resonates a
so
particular
many
way
times,
in
yeah.
that position. The other thing I would say, coming back to finding root movements and single notes and so forth for chord progressions, is to just find it on a single string, like the bottom string. Because if you just restrict yourself to a single string, you either go down or you go up in pitch. If you're moving from string to string, you've also then going up and down strings. And while, if I have a chord progression down here I'm trying to work out, I find the roots here. So I know, okay, it's C, it's A, it's G, it's F, but I know they're open chords. So then I'll play them as open chords. But you might just find the roots of the chords first and then decide where you're going to play it on the guitar, depending on what the chord progression is. That might be a bar chord progression, so you'll play them as bar chords or whatever it might be. But that's the other thing. Your ear starts to hear the type of chord it is. You can hear open chords versus bar chords. You can hear when something's capoed. It's got a particular resonance about it. It's higher up, and these things come with experience, right?
Yeah, it comes with experience and just really transcribing a lot of songs. When you get in the habit of just transcribing song after song, your ear starts to pick up on these things where it's obvious that it's open chords just because of the sustain of the chords and the way that they're sounding. But I completely agree. It's just finding the root notes on either one string or max the 5th and 6th string, and then deciding where you feel like it's being played. If it's bar chords, open chords. Sometimes it might only be chords that are using strings 1 through 3 if it's really high up. But finding the root notes is the best. And the few stages that I go through is just listening first off for the one chord, and I determine if it's a major or minor key, which is usually pretty easy because you can just determine, is this a happy or uplifting feeling song or more of a serious down song? And then once I know what the key is, then I just listen for the root notes. And then let's say that I think that it's going to a 5, the 5 chord. Well, the 5 chord is supposed to be major, so I listen out for that. And if it's major, then I'm good. If it's minor, that means I'm wrong. So listening out for the root notes, but then listening out for which chords are major and minor will just give you more clues. So one of the key things about learning songs by ear is knowing theory. Theory helps you so much. And there's just all these little clues you can go through, like was it major or minor? Did that go by a half step or a whole step? It's all these little things. If you understand the theory, it helps you transcribe music a lot more efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're in the key of C, it's probably going to be a C major chord, not a C minor, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Etc. There can be chords, of course, that come in from outside the key, but um, it's not, typically going to be the case. It's going to be pretty diatonic to the key. Diatonic meaning the
Yes.
chords belong to the key, and that's going to be the case most of the times. Otherwise, the song would sound quite weird. So
Yeah.
the other thing is, the theory, absolutely, and there's just so many. There's chord progressions that are used all the time, right? I mean, your 1 to your 5 to your 6 to your 4 is going to be half the songs you ever hear.
Yeah. I would start, if you're training your ear, I would start off with 1, 5, 6, 4 in
Yep.
any order. No
Yes.
matter what order you put that in,
Yep.
it is hundreds, if not thousands of songs. If you could just identify those 4, then you can transcribe probably the majority of music you're listening to.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So put them in different keys, different orders, but you'll start to hear that in
Right.
music. So you'll be driving along, and a song comes on, and you'll go, that's a 1 6 5 4, or that's a whatever it might be.
Uh-huh.
You're not going to say that's a G, that's an E minor, because you don't have a guitar in your hand and you don't have
Right.
perfect pitch. But
Yeah.
with a guitar in your hand, you can then go and go, the root's G. Now I know what all the chords are because I know it's a 1 5 6 4 or a 2 6 5 4 or whatever it might be. Right? There's
Exactly.
going to be.
That's and it's really encouraging too when you realize that is a lot of the times people think if I'm going to be able to transcribe songs, this means that I need to know a mountain of stuff. I need to spend years training.
Yeah.
And training your ear does take time, but it's not as overwhelming as you might think. You just start off with those 4 and you've made like a huge leap, to transcribing music. And the majority of the time I'm listening to music, it's 1 4 5 6 in any order.
Yeah.
That's turn on the radio. That's all it is.
You're probably going to hit a song that's using that, right?
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it's extremely common. It's everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not, yeah, I mean, all the sort of mainstream music, and we're talking about the majority of music that you hear out there is, yeah, it's essentially a few chord progressions in a particular key. And, let's say we're working out single notes here, we're talking about chords a bit, and if we have knowledge, for example, if I've got a chord, a song, let's say that's using C, G, A minor, F, it's 1 5 6 4 in C, and there's a riff or a solo, I know probably it's going to be coming from C major pentatonic, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
more C major, but if it's a rock sort of pop song, guitar orientated, it's probably pentatonic. And if you know the key, you know where to go. So I'm not looking at all these notes and magically guessing where they are. I know that it's going to be probably 1 of 5 notes, and I've
Yeah.
got patterns, even just one pattern on the fretboard. You'll find those notes, they're there, and you get
Yes.
more and more familiar with the same moves, the same things. Nothing's really completely unique. It's,
No, it's over and over. The chords are done over and over. The solos, the same licks will be played over and over and over, just in different contexts and played in a different way. But yeah, it's because musicians are reusing, which is good, a lot of things that other players have played. It makes training your ear not as overwhelming because you'll start recognizing different licks and different songs, and yeah, knowing different patterns helps a lot too on the guitar. Because when I'm listening to a song or I'm listening to a solo, in my mind, I'm shrinking the guitar, like you
Mhm.
said. Like I'm not thinking it could be anywhere. I'm thinking of a small area that it could be, but based on the key, and then it makes figuring it out a lot easier, a lot more simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And you start as you work on guitar orientated music, you start to hear. I mean, initially, if we're just getting started with this, you just want to find the right pitches, right? Just find the notes, even just on wherever on the guitar.
Right.
But if you can relate it to a pattern, you can almost predict what's going to happen next in a lot of cases as you get
Yeah.
into something. But you want to find the pitches of the notes. Then a sort of refined level or a deeper level is how are those notes being played. So as we listen more to guitar music, you can hear when, for example, a note is, or a couple of notes, let's say, whether they're both being picked with a plectrum because you can hear the attack on the notes, or if it's a slide, you'll learn to hear slides on guitar if you don't already,
Yeah.
or can't get it on the acoustic, but
Yeah.
you
That
picked
was
a good string here.
that was good, man. Yeah.
I'll go here.
That's
So,
hard on an acoustic.
so you can hear when a note's being bent,
Right.
even when it's quick. You hear the timbre of the note and the all the microtones when you bend a note versus sliding versus picking versus hammering on. All these phrasing elements you start to be able to identify, if not already. I mean, if you already play music and you're looking at tablatures and that's how you're sort of learning your songs, you're going to be familiar with slides and bends and hammer-ons. But you'll start to find the notes, then you'll be able to identify whether it's been hammered on or bent or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah. This was a problem I came across when I was really first trying to transcribe music. Is I would transcribe guitar riffs or solos, and all the notes would be exactly right, but it didn't sound right. And it
Mm.
was because I wasn't listening for, well, did they just play that note or did they bend into that note? Was there vibrato there? It's once you figure out the notes, you're not done. You have to figure out exactly how they're playing the notes, how hard they're attacking. Did they just strike one string or do they rake some others and then hit it? So
Mm.
yeah, when you figure out the notes, you need to go in deeper and make sure that now you're playing it exactly like the guitar player played it, if you want to replicate it perfectly.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
that's a big part. That's the final touches that makes it sound so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So first step is just find the pitch, and if you can do that, that's fantastic. These things will come in time as you do it. So I'd love to be able to say just do A, B, and C, and you can work songs out by ear within 2 weeks. It's not going to happen like that, but it's going to be one of the best
Yeah, I
things you
wish.
invest your time into for all the things we said initially, but all the sort of secondary things that it benefits as well, just your general playing and interpreting songs and jamming with musicians and hearing, listening skills. Um,
Right.
and the other thing is, once you've found your notes and the way the notes are being played, as if it's a C note, we can play it here, we can play it here, we can play it there, we can play it there. So you've got to
Right.
find which position it's being played in. And with time and developing your ear, you'll be able to hear, there'll be some clues, that the timbre of the note sometimes, I mean, a C here is quite different to the C here
Right.
in
Have
terms
a
of
different tone.
the
Yeah.
tone, right? So
Yeah.
you can kind of go, yeah, that's where it is. Or perhaps it's a C note, but it's a pentatonic based lick, and it just fits better in pattern one, which is used a lot. It depends on the lick. Sometimes it'll be a classic pattern one or pattern two lick. And it'll be to do with the greater context of what's happening around the note as well as to whether where you might go. But again, that's the next sort of level where once you've found the note and identified it and played it, then you want to find the position and the way it's being played and all those sorts of things so you can get it more accurate.
Exactly. Yeah.
What about, in your opinion, Dylan, or thoughts on where to begin? Like, are there certain types of songs that you might recommend to work out by ear? What's something that's going to set up a nice little victory in the beginning? Because I mean, you could go to any song and it could be something that's really, it could be the way it's mixed, it could be all the instruments, it could be the style, it could be whatever. That might make it more difficult. So, is there some way that you can identify music that might be a good place to start for working tunes out by ear?
Yeah, I mean, generally, as far as genres go, like pop is usually a good genre to be in when you're transcribing music because usually it's three, four chords, a lot of songs. Rock is really good about that too, depending on who you're listening to. I wouldn't recommend like jazz or fusion or music like Dream Theater because that's like way advanced trying to figure that out by ear. But one thing that I've done is I've just looked up songs that only have two or three chords in them, and this is a great place to start. And then you just try to listen to it and transcribe it, and you just go through the list. There's hundreds and hundreds of songs that only have 2 to 4 chords in them, and you can practice those. And the majority of them will be the 1, 4, 5, 6 that we were talking about earlier. And I would just listen to them. And whether you like that style of music or not, it doesn't matter because this is just training your ear to get to the point where you can transcribe the music that you like. But what I did is one thing is don't pick up your guitar. When you listen and you're trying to transcribe a song, first just try to listen to it. Try to find out what chord feels like the one, and then just make a guess at what you're hearing. Like, is it the one chord? Is it the fifth chord of the key? And if you have no idea, then just do your best, and then you can pick up your guitar, figure it out note by note, and figure out what it was. And when I first started doing this, I was wrong a lot. So what I would do is I would play what I thought it was, and then I would play what was correct so that my ear could hear what it actually was. So I would say that just looking up songs that have very few chords, the best thing is if it's just 3 or 4 chords that go through the entire song. There are songs with only 2 chords. They are definitely out there. If you want really easy ones, like Imagine Dragons has a 2 chord song.
Yeah.
They're very, very simple songs. But starting with simple songs like that is going to be a huge help.
Yeah, definitely 2 chord songs. Even just, I mean, even just it sounds bit basic, but even just basic nursery rhymes, just single line melodies that,
Absolutely.
it doesn't
Yes.
matter what it is. You're not trying to work out something that you're going to go perform to someone. You're just practicing the skill of hearing something and finding it on your guitar. That's essentially what's
Right.
happening at the foundation. So if it's, sometimes you can just get something that's got a really defined melody that's very simple. Nursery rhymes, these sorts of things are quite simple, and you can just find the melody and find it on it, as was said, on a single string. Don't worry about how it's being played at this point, or where it's being played. Just if you reduce it to a single string, any string, but stay on that string, you've only got 2 choices. You don't sort of then have to make a choice of complicate it with the moving from one string to another.
Yeah.
The other thing is sometimes, and this has happened to me a lot and still does, if I'm trying to work something out by ear, sometimes you hit a bit of a roadblock, or you just mentally are drained, or you're just not in the frame of mind to do it. So it can make a world of difference when you walk away and you come back to it the next day or later on that same day. You can just be refreshed, and all of a sudden it's clear. That's what it is. Sometimes it's just you can be a bit clouded, and it's just better to do what you can for 5-10 minutes, whatever it might be. If you kind of hit a bit of a block, you get a bit fatigued with doing that, then just walk away, come back. You'll be much fresher with it, the
Yeah.
second pass.
Sometimes that is the best thing you can do. If you're getting frustrated or it's just not working right, you're not able to figure it out, taking a break can be exactly what you need.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times the way we learn, like it's very similar to working out or building muscle, is when you're lifting weights or you're in the gym, you're not actually building muscle, you're tearing it down. And then in the rest periods is when it builds. And a lot of times it can be the same with progressing a guitar, progressing your ear, is when you're practicing and you're listening, you're uploading a lot of info, and sometimes your brain just needs time to process everything. So a lot of the times you'll be frustrated with something, and then if you sleep on it, you give it a day, you come back to it, a lot of the times you're better at it. So you can get better just in the rest periods a lot of times with the guitar. So yeah, if you're getting frustrated, if things are going downhill, just give it a rest. This still happens to me. I'm sure it
Yeah,
happens to you, Simon.
absolutely.
I can get frustrated on some stuff, especially when I feel like I should get it and I'm not getting
Yeah.
it.
And then
Uh,
sometimes you can't, you come back and it's the most simple chord that you just couldn't hear.
yeah, it was just like the 4 chord. You're just overthinking it or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that happens to me more than I'd like.
And and the other thing, I guess, is just coming to mind now. Sometimes, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but make sure you're in tune, okay? Because
Oh
that will help. But
golden.
sometimes you listen to music and it's not quite 440, right? It's not like it's tuned down, or
Yeah,
it's just
especially the
like a
older.
find that with like a lot of comes to mind like Rolling Stones, AC/DC. Um, it's because sometimes it's tuned down, so you'd want to know that too. You want to be correctly tuned for the song
Right.
you're working out. If it's a half step down, you're going to have a much harder time, particularly if you're not used to doing this. Working the song out, it's going to be very difficult. But sometimes things are just slightly,
Yeah, it's like 4:45. It's yeah,
yeah,
it's something weird. I mean, even like I was doing one lesson on this the Scar Tissue by Red Hot Chili
oh yeah,
Peppers.
yep.
That main melody that he did, he was actually literally just a little out of tune.
I
It,
did,
it
yeah,
he just thought it sounded good. The B string was out, you know.
yes.
So sometimes this happens. It's older music and they're tuned to a different way, or they didn't have the tuners we had, so they're all tuned to each other and they're all a little off, you know. So yeah, that definitely is a thing.
Yes, and you sort of touched on it before, and I think this is good, and I touched on it earlier. Um, when you don't have the guitar in your hands, just listening to music. Try and take a song, any song, and listen to it, listen through the song, and just focus on one instrument. Now, by default,
Yeah,
you're going to have a particular way you listen to a song. So for me, when I hear a song, I'm really listening to the guitar, right? I'm a guitar player. I'm kind of naturally by default focused on the guitar part. If you don't play music, you probably, not necessarily, but possibly just sort of hear the sum of all the parts, right? You just hear the
yeah,
song. But what you want to be able to do is be able to hear the song from different perspectives, different vantage points. So if you listen to a song as you typically listen to it, then you go back and you focus in, let's say, on the drums, and you just really listen to the drums throughout the whole song, you'll hear it completely differently. And you'll hear things that you weren't aware of. It's kind of like a peripheral vision, but you kind of like, okay, now I'm over here. I'm really focused on the drums. I can hear the other instruments. They're there, but I can just, it's like the fader thing again. I'm putting up the drums and I'm
it
listening.
is.
And then listen to the song again, but listen to the bass. Just really focusing on the bass, and you'll hear the song completely differently. Guitar, vocals, whatever's going on in the song. Just try and listen. There's parts you might have heard the song a million times. You'll hear stuff that you were never aware was even in the song. But the point is developing your ear and training your ear to be able to pull things apart. So when you're working on with the guitar in your hand, working the song out, you can identify the guitar. Or a lot of the time, I'll arrange music. I love arranging songs for acoustic guitar. So that means I've got to listen to other instruments. I want to bring in some of the bass, or I want to add the vocal melody to a chord melody arrangement, or some percussive element the drums are doing. So it's not just training your ear to pull those things apart and hear them individually in isolation, but it's also, because you might draw from it to create something on the instrument. And also your your listening skills will be better when you're jamming with people. You won't be so just in your own world playing.
Yeah.
Yes, you've got to kind of be doing what you're doing, but you've got to be aware of what's happening around you. Otherwise, you'll sort of have the blinkers on, and you won't play as well, or kind of make the most of other things that are happening around you.
Yeah, yeah, you will. And when you're transcribing music, if you don't have a lot of practice just isolating instruments, then just listening to music a lot will help you. I mean, you can just practice this in your car when you just listen to music, pick an instrument and start just trying to hone in on it.
Yep,
And once you start kind of training your ear a little bit, if you haven't already, you completely change the way you hear music forever.
I do.
It's way more, and it's for the better. You listen to music on such a deeper way because you're listening to exactly isolated the guitar. You can hear the drums, you can hear the bass, you can hear everything they're doing. And I remember before I could play or before I had an ear, it just sounded like one main thing.
Yeah.
And then it was like waking up from the Matrix. Like it was like there was so much more going on. And it started helping me be able to play better with other people. It helped me transcribe better. I mean, and just for the rest of your days, it helps you enjoy music more.
And you want to, that's very true. And you want to hear, when you listen for patterns, is it the
Right.
same chord progression, or does it change in the chorus? Is the chorus the same as the intro? What are the lengths? What's the chord change? Is there frequent chord changes? Are they changing every bar, half bar? These sorts of things you want to be able to identify just by listening, because that's all going to contribute. And you're right. I mean, I used to, I, I remember when I was in grade six, so that's like I'm 12, and there was this guitar player that came in to talk to us at school. I wasn't playing guitar at this point, and he's a
Yeah.
professional player. He played on TV. He had videos of him playing on TV, all this, and that's when I first realized, wow, the guitar's just does like he demonstrated the song, and he's going, all I do is just play this riff over and over for this whole song, and I was like, I thought the guitar just kept doing different stuff.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
seems so stupid.
Yeah.
But even, and that's an extreme sort of example. I mean, I was young, I hadn't played guitar at all, but it really is repetitive. I mean, it's not typically doing all that much in a lot of songs. So you want to pick up on that and realize it's
It
not
is.
such a
Yeah.
mountain to climb working out a particular song, because it can be quite simple a lot of the times, and particularly when you start with simple tunes, like you say.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And the first song you transcribe is going to be the hardest, and every single one after that just gets a little bit easier because after a while you do start to hear all of these different patterns, and kind of the stages that I go through when I'm listening to songs is one, like I said, I find a one. Once I've figured out what the chord progressions are, then you want to figure out, well, what is the strumming pattern? Like you were
Mm,
saying, Simon, when are the chords changing? And you'll know the majority of songs either change on beat one or the end of two.
yep.
Like that is, or at beat three. It's those three ones that are extremely common. And listening for it was the chorus section, different chords, and all these different things. But like a checklist is just knowing the rhythm, when
Yep.
chords are changing, knowing what the chords are, and where everything is being played.
That's
But
yes.
yeah,
And
go.
and the bass movement, it helps you identify where chord changes are. Chord changes can be hard to hear at first if you're not used to doing this,
Yeah,
right?
they can.
It's the bass that changes, and you go, oh, that must not always the case, but a lot of the time it's going to be the change of the bass note will be a change in chord, and you can kind of hear where these chords are. You'll get better
Right.
at hearing the guitar strumming, but that can be a little bit more buried in the mix, and the bass typically carries, right? So you can really
Yeah. The
zone
bass
in.
is actually way more prominent in the mix or even a live show wherever you can always really hear the bass really well. And
Yeah,
it's also a really good idea to listen to the bass because the guitar, I mean, just doing simple chords like a C, you have all of these other notes that are going around it where the bass will just be
yeah,
playing. They'll just be playing those one note, so it's much simpler to listen to and figure out.
yeah.
If you listen to that bass, you pause it, find it, listen to the bass, pause it, find it. Eventually, you get to where you can just listen to a progression and know what's going on.
Yeah. And you spoke of rhythm before, which is the other
Yeah.
thing that we've sort of alluded to, but you work out the notes, that's great, but you've also got to work out the rhythm by ear. If we're just talking completely by ear, you've got to be able to play it back accurately in terms of the rhythm. So there was when I was in music school, it sounds like a kindergarten game, but one of the exercises in a particular class were, there's a lot of us, we're in a circle. Someone would clap a rhythm, and the person next to them had to repeat that rhythm, and you go around and see if you could keep the rhythm
Yeah.
accurate, or it would change typically, which is good because then you've got to be aware of that and you've got to clap it back. So just, hearing a line or a strumming pattern or whatever it is, the skill of being able to just clap back rhythm. So again, without a guitar in your hands necessarily, you can hear, and you should practice this thing of interpreting a rhythm and being able to tap something back. So you might hear a little phrase in a solo. So yes, you've got to work the notes out, but how is it rhythmically? Can you tap the rhythm to the phrase, or
Exactly.
use your voice to express the rhythm, or something to kind of, again, awareness of time and knowing the time signature and feeling where the beat is gives you the reference point for what is happening around it. So many times when I'm working things out by ear, particularly if it's something that's a bit intricate, I will tap my foot and count aloud as I'm playing to feel, yeah, that's on the end, or that's it's either, as you said, a lot of the time on the end or on the beat. It can be on, sort of 16th note divisions too, but
Yeah.
if you get a
Yeah.
feel for that and you can feel where those notes are, then you'll be able to, play them accurately, rhythmically speaking too.
Yeah, exactly. And you can figure out the rhythm before or after you figured out the notes or the
Yeah,
chords. Like
yes,
for instance, if you're trying to transcribe a guitar solo, Well, you do have the option of, before even figuring out the notes, you can just listen to it and just try to clap the rhythm, right?
Yep.
And by doing this, the pro of this is, well, when you're clapping that rhythm, you're going to know exactly how many notes are happening in that solo or in that riff, and then you can start slowly filling in the blanks. And you can do it vice versa. You can figure out the notes first and then the rhythm. But the best thing you can do is, when you're trying to figure out rhythm, is one, being able to clap it. If you can clap that rhythm on time, then you really know it. But when you're figuring it out, what you want to do is you want to count like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then listen to it as you're counting.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you hear a sound or a note being played on 2, you know. And then the end of 4, you know. But it's important to have a sharp count, meaning that you get to the bottom really quick, the top really quick. So and it looks kind of funny when you're doing it, but if you're doing it like this and it's real sloppy, it's going to be kind of hard to tell where things are happening. So you just have a hard count, you listen to it, you can clap it. That will help a lot with the rhythm. But also, too, just being able to play these rhythms really helps. Like common rhythms, common strumming patterns.
Yeah.
Just being able to play them, it goes a long way to being able to listen to them and know what's going on.
And it's like, it's not random sort of rhythm. So, like chord progressions and refs and things, there's common rhythm divisions used all the time. You'll hear like da, 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 quaver with semiquavers, or just quavers, or, dotted notes. There's very, very common rhythm combinations. So you get a feel for it, and you'll be driving along, you go, oh, that rhythm pattern, or whatever, so it's not going to be something completely different every time. There's going to be common little rhythm groupings, if you like, that you'll learn to hear. And the more you, as you say, you count out and feel or hear where the notes are, you start to just feel where notes are. You feel the beats, you feel a down, you feel an upbeat. You can really sort of, all this becomes much more ingrained within you as you do it more.
Yeah, it is. It's just doing it often.
Yeah.
A lot of times, if you're not used to transcribing songs or going through it in the beginning, for a while, you're going to have a tough time with it. It's just going to take a little bit while. You're not going to be able to transcribe your first song perfectly. But after doing 10 songs, 20 songs, listening to it, figuring it out, you just get better so much faster.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to just little parts of it, isolating instruments, finding on the guitar, this is a great starting point. The end goal is to be able to listen to it without an instrument anywhere near you and know what's going on. That's the end goal.
Yes.
But just finding it on the guitar and listening to it is a great way to start getting to that end goal, getting there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that, I'm certainly not against using tablature. Tablature is great, gets all of this. I would just say a little rule I would have is always be working something out by ear. So it doesn't have to be something where you're going to work out a complete song. It might just be a little part of the song, and the purpose is just to work with your ear, or it could be anything, as we've said. But always just have a portion of your time dedicated to working something out by ear. And as you get better with it, if you're consistent with it, you'll get better with it. As you get better with it, you'll do it more. And you'll also, when you're looking at tablatures, you'll go, oh, that's incorrect. There's the classic.
You'll start to note it. And that's a good.
It's not a major or a minor chord in the song. You'll see a mistake most times in chord charts.
Right.
That, it's like, oh, it's B diminished. Oh, I would just say it's B minor. And it's wrong.
Right.
Or it's the relative major instead of the minor, or whatever. There's common mistakes you'll see in charts and things online, and so you'll be able to correct those as you get better. But yeah, don't sort of, and I'm sure you're not saying this either, Dylan. Don't ignore tablature or chord charts or whatever. Just bring this into your playing. 5 minutes per session or whatever it might be. Just make sure it's consistent, and also, when you're listening to music, take some time just to, as we were saying, isolate the parts and really listen for rhythms and repetition and instruments and things like that. Just bring it into your playing as a component to everything else that you do, and you'll get better with it, and you'll start to do it more naturally. One other thing, just before we finish up here, Dylan, your thoughts on, these days, the things you can do with software and slowing down songs to work them out. Do you think that's a good idea to do, or would you say it's better just to hear it in real time because that's how it actually is, and you want to get better at being able to do that, as opposed to always having to slow things down. You know, like on YouTube, you can change the speed,
Yeah,
or you can buy,
percent. Yeah,
you know, the
yeah,
amazing slow downer is one that used to be doing the rounds. Don't know if it still is, but apps and
yeah.
things. What do you think about that?
I don't really have a problem with them. I've been using them for a long time. I remember there was this one store that came out with a big device that could slow down CDs
Uh-huh.
that cost like 250 bucks. And now like we can do it for free.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have a problem with it. The only thing is you just want to look out for using things as a crutch.
Yeah.
Like if
Oh,
you are slowing everything down without even trying to hear it in full speed, then there is an issue because there eventually you do just want to hear things in full speed and know what's going on. Now for some things like complicated solos or guitar solos that are playing like 30-second notes and crazy stuff like that, I slow down music. I definitely use that as an aid. But if you're definitely new to it, you can start using it with everything, but you don't eventually want to use it for everything you're trying to transcribe. If you notice that it's starting to become a crutch, then you should start weaning yourself off it. It's the same thing with tablature. Tablature can be a great aid, but it can also be a crutch, so it just depends. But I would say it's completely fine. I use it, it helps a lot, but well, what do you think, Simon, about it?
yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good point to make. It's if it's an aid, not a crutch, it's fine, you know, because sometimes you're going to have some things that require you to slow it down. And as you get better, you'll use those things perhaps a little less. But certainly, yeah, if there's something quite quick,
Yeah,
then, you know, you do want to have the, I think you do want to develop the ability to hear something at normal speed and be able to slow it down in your mind. I think that's a
yes,
good skill to develop, which you
it is.
will. You want to be able to do that, but that doesn't mean you can't use, you know, apps and software to slow some things down that are quite fast, because you still got to sit there and find the notes.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, as an aid, not a crutch, definitely. I think so for sure. Um,
yeah.
so, anything else you want to add here, Dylan, on working songs out by you?
Um, no, I think we've covered a lot. I think we've gone through a lot of stuff.
I would just say, don't be discouraged the first time you sit down to try and do it and you come up with nothing. The fact that you've sat down and you've tried to do it, that's enough. Doesn't matter what result you get, even if you just don't find a single note, don't worry about it. If you keep doing that, I will guarantee you're going to get better at it. And if it seems like magic, it seems like something out of your reach, uh, and I know, same for you, Dylan. It was exactly the same for me too. It was not something that came naturally.
Not
Um,
at
it was
all.
something that was like, how the hell do I do this? I had a friend who could do it, you know, and it's like, how do you do that? You know, how do you work stuff out by ear? Um, but it's a learned skill, and if you take it slowly and take some of the things that we've spoken about today, then it's going to be an easier process. But it does take some time. But it's just one of those things. Without, I mean, up there with learning to improvise and um, perhaps theory and the ear and working songs out by ear is definitely one of the best things I did, and I'm so grateful that I did start doing that quite early on. And wherever you are with your guitar playing, now's the time, to start doing that
Yeah.
and just bringing it in just a little bit into your playing. Not too much. It can be 5 minutes. That's it. It can be mentally draining, so expect that. But if you can find a single note, then you can find all the notes. It just will take a little bit of time. Or if you can find a single chord, you've got it. You can do it. You're just going to refine it, get quicker and better at it.
Yes. Yeah. I completely agree. It's a learned skill. I was awful at this,
Yeah.
and it over years of practicing, it has developed. I couldn't even hear a major minor chord at one
Yeah.
point. So
Yeah.
over time, you just get better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Dylan, I do believe you've got something that's very topical to what we're talking about today here that you'd like to offer.
Yes, so I have this video. It's just that I put together. It's 5 easy ways to practice ear training. So it's 5 easy and one of the most effective practicing things that you can do for ear training that will allow you to have fun with training your ear and develop really quickly. And it's completely free. All you have to do is download it, and you'll have 5 ways that you can train your ear tomorrow. So you'll be able to use it right away. Or
Excellent.
today. For me, it's super
Yeah.
late. Depending on where you are,
Depends
it's
where you
today
are.
or tomorrow, but you can use it right away.
Excellent. Awesome. And for those who are into finger picking, and of course that is not all I do, but a lot of what I do, so I know a lot of you are, I do have something that's quite new that I've just brought out recently. It's a free ebook. It comes with video examples. So you'll have a video embedded web pages in the ebook you can click on and it'll go to a web page. Every example is demonstrated via video by myself. And as the title suggests, it's 10 finger picking patterns that you can learn very, very quickly. The thing here is, though, it's not just the pattern that we're focusing on here. In fact, that's sort of only half of it, because any sort of finger picking pattern is really just a pattern. It's a technical thing. It's not going to really sound musical at all. What makes it sound more musical is how you apply it. So in this ebook, I take you through 10 patterns and I apply each one in very creative ways. It's not going to be your typical open chords, bar chords. It's going to be some very creative ways to apply it. And in a lot of, almost all of them, if not all of them, it's going to be easier than doing open chords and bar chords. So it's not technically hard, but it's going to sound very cool and advanced in terms of, creatively, if you like. So I will pop that in the link, in the chat. And I've also put Dylan's e-training video into the chat as well. So you can find links there and you can check those out if you like. So thank you so much, Dylan. I really appreciate you coming back on today and we could get into the specifics of working songs out by ear. It's always great to chat and get other people's perspectives and, obviously there's a lot of crossover. Yes. And I really appreciate your time on a Sunday night to come out and provide us with your wisdom.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me, man. It's always fun.
You're very welcome, and thank you everybody who has shown up today for the live stream. Very much appreciated. It's always great to have you guys on, and there will be more live streams coming up. So check out emails related to that. And for now, I wish everybody a great morning or afternoon or night, wherever you are, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, guys.